And let's start this event. And thank you so much for coming to this event. We'll be talking about AI and open source and we are welcoming amazing game changers in this industries from Japan and overseas. And I will just quickly go through the agendas. So we'll be emceeing today. I'm a Midori from CIC Institute. And this event is collaborative events with CTC, one of our partner companies. And we'll have a input session from startups, Liquid AI, Stability AI, and Sakana AI. Sakana AI is one of our clients at CIC Tokyo, as well as JJ. He's a founder of OSS Capitals. OSS Capital is one of the first AI and open source forecast venture capitals in the US. And then we will have panel sessions for like 15 minutes. And everybody who's attending today will be participating in the panel sessions, and moderator will be by Hisa from CTC headquarters. And then we have 30 minutes of networking time at the end. Okay, so before starting this event, I would like to explain a little bit about CIC and why we are hosting this event. So CIC have extensive global networks. Including Tokyo, we have 8 innovation centers, and obviously we have a lot of startups, including Sakana AIs, and many industries like energy and environment, technologies, and healthcare, life sciences. But we're not only having startups, but also have different sectors who can support startups, like cities and governments and big corporates who want to work with startups. And we have over like 200 events and seminars hosting every year in many different industries. And my team, CIC Institute, is doing more like a software of CIC business. We call platform businesses, but we're the team that specialize in innovation ecosystem. And we do several acceleration programs funded by governments or cities and big corporates. And our focus area is life science and energy and environments, and smart cities and educations. But AI hasn't been really our main focus, but these days, like we have many inquiries from overseas or from even Japan. A lot of CIC clients who want to have offices in CIC is in those industry too. And CTC is one of our corporate partners in energy and environment communities, but they ask us to collaborate in AI and open source industries for this specific events. And we'll have amazing guests today, and we'll love to pass my mic to Masa Tanaka-san, President of CTC Americas. Please welcome Tanaka-san.
Thank you, Midori-san. So, hi, I'm Masanori Tanaka from CTC America. CTC アメリカの田中です。冒頭に少しご挨拶させていただきます。First of all, thank you very much for joining today's event. So today we have the 4 rock stars in the AI and open source world. So we have the JJ from OSS Capital, and the Ramin Liquid AI, Jerry from Stability AI, and Leon, Sakana AI, right? So I'd like to spend a moment to sharing the background and objective of today's event as an opening comment. As you know, AI, generative AI, has been quite booming since ChatGPT was released by OpenAI. I think everybody thought our business is changing. But in reality, there are some challenges if you are installed in the enterprise use case, such as data privacy and security, hallucination, and huge cost tuning of LLM, large language model, etc. Given this situation, we CTC find that AI technology taking advantage of the open source economy should be a great solution for our future business. Next up, so we have the great session about how open source is eating the software, as well as we're going to hear from the promising AI startup companies. I really hope all you guys feel the second chapter of the AI business. And if you're interested in the talking with business with them, so please CTC know, please let us know. So last but not least, CIC Japan team, Japan members. So thank you so much for arranging today's event. So that's it from my side. So thanks again. So enjoy the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tanaka. And I know everybody's waiting to hear presentations from our guest speakers. So let's welcome JJ. Is that okay to call you JJ? JJ from OSS Capitals. OSS Capital is the first and only VC that focuses on investing commercial open source companies. Who'll be presenting trends in AI markets in the US and global. Are you ready to present? Okay. Please welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. I don't have slides, so hopefully this is okay to have just a conversation, but I wanted to say thank you first to Masa-san and the CTC team for the partnership with some really great enterprises and startups and other startups here in Japan that we're learning about and starting to collaborate with. I am the founder of a fund called OSS Capital. I started it in 2018. And I didn't really have a plan to become an investor or a VC in my career, but it took me a couple years to get our fund started. And we really started investing pretty actively in early 2021. And we're one of the early investors in Stability AI and companies like W4 Games, the creators of the open source Godot game engine, Hopscotch in India, as well as Liquid AI and a bunch of other companies in the open source ecosystem. And my background was as an entrepreneur. I actually met Hisa-san, Tanaka-san. Where is he? I'm trying to find where over there, almost a decade ago. And Yahoo Japan was building their infrastructure on Kubernetes at the time. And this is how I kind of got to know some folks here in the Japanese ecosystem. And so pretty recently, actually, in the last maybe couple of years, we got back in touch and ended up developing a partnership. So yeah, we're really excited to be here. I'm actually here in Tokyo with a couple of our founders, Ramin here from Liquid AI, as well as the team at Parallel from Toronto, and also the founder of BitTensor, Jake Steves, who actually lives in Peru, and a couple of other companies. But in general, what I do is I try to invest in very early stage startups at the seed and pre-seed stage, focused on open source technologies, really open research or open source projects that have potential to become the basis for large disruptive shifts in the technology industry. So we really invest in all kinds of things, but I think the introduction was asking me to talk about market trends and technology trends. So I'll do my best to kind of make a couple comments about that. In general, I think open source is very important for the future of the technology industry and for the development of products and services. I think we're all pretty familiar with Open AI and their original vision that actually Elon Musk and Ilya Sutskever and Greg Brockman and others actually created as a way to build open research, open source research to advance artificial intelligence and move forward towards artificial general intelligence. And obviously, we've seen a lot of market development and capitalism and products built out over the last few years, making AI models more and more proprietary. And one of the things that I'm a big fan of is open research and sort of transparency in terms of how technology is actually built. And so I think that's a really important fundamental thing that we should encourage more. There's a lot of open source innovation happening here in Japan and in the Middle East and the United States. And I think everyone's probably familiar with Meta and the work by Jan LeCun and the team there building open source technologies like PyTorch, which is actually kind of the fundamental technology along with TensorFlow from Google and JAX for actually designing these models and building the sort of the design of the models. Llama as well from Meta, which is a sort of an open weights sort of open source-esque framework for building LLMs. But one of the things that I think is probably worth understanding about open source is it goes back to the early days of the technology industry in the 1980s, actually. So there's this guy, maybe just some history lessons here. There's a guy named Richard Stallman, and he came up with this this sort of innovation framework or licensing framework called copyleft, which is sort of the opposite of copyright. So we're all familiar with copyright or intellectual property, sort of like assigning ownership for the design of a particular algorithm or particular technology invention. Richard Stallman was very passionate about transparency and permissionless innovation in building technology. And he created this copyleft framework. And so really the software industry started to build around that sort of idea, and a huge amount of innovation has been created thanks to that sort of contribution by Richard Stallman. And so open source is really kind of a rebranding of free software, which is what Richard originally called sort of this copyleft movement. And what we've sort of seen in the last couple of years, or really a year and a few months with ChatGPT, like Masa-san was saying, is the rise of a different kind of computational model, which is neural networks. And it's not really software, right? We're not really operating in the world anymore of source code where you can read the source code and you can kind of introspect it and debug it with your eyes or by hand. We're now kind of training these very large mathematical structures that are actually very difficult to debug and introspect in the conventional sense. And so open source is kind of going through this evolutionary transition from being really focused on source code to now being focused more on large matrices of sort of complex mathematical structures. And the work that Lion and the folks at Google Brain contributed around the transformer is one of these foundational architectures, kind of unlocking a lot of applications in the neural networking world. And so I think that's kind of one thing that we're really interested in, is kind of encouraging more transparency. I'm a big fan of advocating for that. Many other people, obviously, Stability AI and Meta and Hugging Face and Mistral in France and a lot of companies, and Liquid AI is actually making a lot of contributions there over time as well. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of probably the biggest trend. If you could think of two big trends in the technology industry, it's sort of AI transforming most of the software industry and technology industry in a lot of different ways. And then there's sort of two approaches for building AI systems, ones that are more open and understandable and transparent, and ones that are more proprietary and closed. And you have to kind of think about the balance between those two things and kind of understand the implications for your business and for your own personal adoption of technology. So anyways, with that, I guess I'll stop there, and looking forward to the conversation on the panel later.
Thank you so much, JJ. And next up, we'll have three founders and leaders in AI and open source industries, and Ramin Hasami from Liquid AI, and Lion from Sakana AI, Lion, and Jerry Chi from Stability AI. And I will pass my mic to Ramin. Are you ready to present?
Hello. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Ramin Hasani. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about Liquid AI. We are after designing intelligence from ground up. Okay, we want to design AI systems that we understand from first principles. So we don't want to create like black boxes. We want to create white boxes. Okay, that's what we want to do at Liquid AI. Our vision is to not only create capable models, but models that are efficient and are trustworthy. We want to deploy them eventually in our society, right? So we need to be able to understand the systems that we deploy in society. So the underlying technology upon which we're building Liquid AI is a technology we invented back in 2017, where we started looking into brains and how brains perform computations. And we started modeling interaction of cells with each other with continuous time processes. And then we took those kind of concepts and we built a mathematical framework where you can process sequential data very efficiently and also in an understandable fashion. You don't need a handful of neurons would be enough to actually drive a car. This is what we showed. You can fly drones with 30 neurons and with a proper kind of vision network. So you can really have like design intelligence in a way that doesn't need a large system to actually solve. And we had like a bunch of, the technology has evolved into, solving a bunch of, fundamental problems in machine learning. For example, we have evidence that these type of neural networks would be able to do out of distribution generalization, which is like a fundamental property, working on data that you haven't seen before. So this technology unlocked solving many kind of real world application, ranging from autonomous driving to, modeling financial kind of markets, And now it could be also even scaled to text and audio and vision, basically, or a combination of these things as a generative AI solution. So I want to show you in the light of Sora coming out, one of the very, very, early on applications that we had. These are all fake videos generated by a system that we designed. And we train actual autonomous cars using this data that we generated, using physical systems, physical world models. And this is an actual car that is driving using those simulated data sets. So that is what I mean by bringing intelligence to the real world in a way that we can track. And this technology would have like implications on really in different levels of, it's a good use of generative AI outside of the space of text and in the space of signal. Okay. So the technology, as I told you before, enabled like many things. Like one other example of the success stories there for the technology is like automation. Liquid neural networks have been deployed on a United States Air Force F-16. Actually, it flew the aircraft autonomously. So you can imagine a degree of trust you need to have in algorithms to be able to deploy on such safety critical applications. It's very, very important, And many other things that are actually coming out of this type of technology that we enabled that I'll be touching base hopefully in our one-on-one conversations. This is our team. We spun out of MIT, and we have a group of talents that each person actually created a fundamental technology for the machine learning community. We have from our team, we have presence in Japan. We have right now we have 2 scientists in Japan that are working, and we have a couple of, I think they're here, and like Stefano, as you see him here, he's located here in Japan. Are you here? There we go. So yeah, so feel free to reach out and have conversation about the details of what we are doing. All right, that's it from my side. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I want to start by letting everyone know that traditionally, public speaking is something that I avoid furiously because I'm actually extremely shy. But I guess through no fault of my own, due to the, to me at least, surprising success of the Transformer Network, I've been sort of pushed into the limelight. Now, I was, very kindly invited to this event by Midori-san, and I thought, oh, great, an event just in the office, just just down the corridor, and I can try out public speaking in a sort of closed, safe environment. And then, I keep getting updates of like how many tickets we've sold, and I think we're like 2.5 times what is more normal. So if I appear to be a little bit nervous, then that's why. And if I manage to forget what I want to say, then apologies in advance. So I guess I'll quickly tell you about myself, who I am, where I come from, about the company, and then if there's time, my thoughts on open source, I think. So my real name is actually Leon. But no one can really say that. It's from a language called Welsh, because I'm from Wales. So depending on where I am in the world, I can be Leon, Lion, Ryan. So if you call me anything ending with ion, I'll probably respond. Yeah, and the fact that I come from Wales and I actually grew up in a village of only 200 people, probably one of the reasons that I'm shy. And now I live in one of the, densely most populated places in the world, and have started a company in Japan. That is very surprising to me. Yeah, so briefly about the company. So from a personal point of view, I was in Google research, and I have to say that I was perfectly happy where I was, but I didn't quite feel like I was doing the kind of research that I wanted to do. And luckily, I think my co-founder, David Ha, felt the same way. We met at Google Research, and we quickly became friends, partly because we saw so eye to eye on the sort of research topics that we'd really love to be working on, but we didn't really have the time and the freedom in the positions that we were currently in. So we decided to start our own company. Now, I want to quickly describe, the name and the logo. So I'm very pleased that the name went down well in Japan, because I thought, at least to an English ear, calling your business Fish is definitely a bit weird. But the idea is, of course, if you've been reading the press, we want to be working on nature-inspired algorithms. And one example of that is collective intelligence or swarm dynamics. So that is sort of depicted in our logo here. And there are a few meanings. They also look a little bit like logic gates. There's one red fish here that's supposed to represent us swimming away from the rest, right? Where right now we kind of feel like a lot of startups are doing the same thing. They just go to a VC and they go, please give us all the money in the world, and we'll go and train a massive language model, and then we'll do something with it. Where, we actually want to take the time to do something a bit more long-term, a bit different, a bit more fundamental. And, I think we're lucky enough that David and I are well-known enough that we can sort of take that liberty to sort of, take our time and see, if we can come up with something new and interesting. Wow, already almost over. Yeah, so I think this kind of depicts the kind of thing that we want to do, right? So if you think of the big companies like OpenAI, like Google, they really are just trying to take one, massive transformer and scale it up. And, we don't want to do that. We don't think it's interesting almost, because that's almost like an engineering problem. We want to do more interesting fundamental research. And the idea is instead of just creating, you know, a hand engineered big model that we have to sort of get running on all these computers, we actually apply the idea from nature inspired intelligence to sort of let the models sort of design themselves. And in exactly the same way as this analogy, we're hoping that, you know, learning how to do it instead of hand designing it will allow us to have much more sort of efficient and much more flexible systems, like you see with the ants that can sort of build things on the fly rather than having it like a very large engineering project. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Jerry of Stability AI, and let me just start off with the fun video. Yeah, we don't have a lot of time, so we can't show the whole video. So we make a bunch of models, basically. That's what our company does. Image models, video models, sound models, physics models, 3D models. All right, moving on. Yeah, so we make a bunch of models. Oh, by the way, I'm Jerry. I started the Stability AI Japan office about a year ago, and yeah, I'm here to help drive open AI models and spread them throughout the world. Yeah, so yeah, sorry, I originally created this presentation to present in Japanese, so I was told at the last minute to present in English. It's only partially translated, but yeah, basically, I think we're a unique company in that you know, we're the only startup that is making open models and is multimodal, and we have a R&D team both globally and also in Japan. Yeah, and so you know, we've made you know, various progress over like the last year and a half. So I'd like to be able to say that you know, we helped kick off the generative AI boom with our work on the Stable Diffusion launch about like in late 2022. Then about a year ago, I set up the Japan office. And yeah, after that, we've just released a lot of models, both Japan or Japanese specific models made by the Japan team, and also like our overseas teams. So not just image models, but also language models and code models and video models and so on. Yeah, so we've also been gotten a bunch of awards. So for example, the Time 100 Most Influential Companies. In Japan, we got the Good Design Award, Best 100 for the Stable Diffusion XL model. We've also joined the AI Alliance for Safe AI and Open Innovation. And yeah, and as for our Japan office, you know, we have various functions. So other than the headquarters, we're actually the only office with all the functions. So we have R&D, we have a marketing community, we have sales and partnerships, and basically all of us are working hard to enable and augment creators and companies in Japan. So we really want to help companies and organizations in Japan harness the power of generative AI and improve their creativity. Yeah, so our Japan team now is roughly 15 people. Yeah, so there's me, and then yeah, we have engineering research and a BD and solutions engineering and so on. And yeah, just to talk a little bit more about our models. So yeah, we actually have the most number of likes on Hugging Face. This data might be like a few months old, but yeah, I was surprised to find out that we actually beat Meta in this metric. So yeah, a lot of people like our models. And we have a lot of stars on GitHub, right? So we release a lot of code about, training models, or Japan team, we actually released some code on evaluating Japanese LLMs. And just to give you an idea, this is about like half the number of stars of Linux, and roughly, and actually more than the number of stars that PyTorch has on GitHub, although that's not a fair comparison because that's only one repo. But yeah, I thought that was quite a lot. Yeah, so yeah, we make image generation models. Yeah, actually, like one of these pictures is, I think, made by David, standing right over there. But yeah, we do like image to image, and yeah, actually, most of the images are that are made in the world by AI is estimated to be made by Stable Diffusion or its derivatives, right? So this kind of shows you kind of the power of open models that various peoples can kind of modify the model like however they want to, so it ends up in leads to a lot of usage. In Japan too, we are very popular. This image I cannot disclose like how we made this, but anyway, you can look forward to our future announcements. We also have, yeah, like upgrading our video models. Yeah, we did kind of some like cool like marketing projects with Asahi Beer, new beer product launch, and Honda also at the Japan Mobility Show last year, and that was a lot of fun. Very like interactive kind of display. So yeah, we hope to do a lot more projects. We kind of support a lot of Japanese startups too, in like how they add AI models to their products, right? So this is an example of like a product for like e-commerce customers that want to make cool product photos. So they basically put our Stable Diffusion model into their SaaS product to allow people to create like cool product photos. Yeah, so we're doing a lot of this kind of cooperation with startups in Japan as well, and big companies. Yep. Yeah, so that's basically it. Yeah, you can follow us on Twitter, and yeah, thanks, and looking forward to the panel.
Thank you so much. Let's give another applause to all the startups who presented today. And I like how everybody has different approach, but AI and their technology could be applied to various industries, from like creative side to mobilities and cities. And yeah, that's really exciting to hear. And next we'll have a panel sessions. But before we are starting, let me introduce a little bit about logistics. These seats are actually open seat for everybody to sit down. So if you can come down a little bit, because people are like behind these corners, and we have a lot of people today at Venture Cafe area. So if someone can sit to the front, that'd be great to give a little bit more space on the people on the behind. 誰も来ないけど大丈夫ですか? Nice, thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, perfect. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, there's 2 more seats at the front. If anybody wants to squeeze. Yes. All right. Also, the Niji seminar room is open for Japanese translations, as I said in the beginning. So if you want to hear Japanese translation, please move to the Niji seminar room next to this Venture Cafe area. Okay, finally, let's move on to the panel sessions. And I would like to invite Hisa Tanaka-san from CTC as a moderators. Are you ready to present? And do you want to give a quick introduction? And please sit to the seats, or the panelists, please.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. It's really hot, right? Yeah. A lot of people here. I actually took my jacket off, and you guys feel free to also take your jacket off too. So it's gonna be an exciting panel discussion that I'll be driving. First of all, myself, Hisa from CTC. I'm the GM of Advanced Technology Incubation at CTC Tokyo headquarters. Basically bringing in where the industry today is to the next level with our clients, partners, like these entrepreneurs, as well as, the VCs like JJ, OSS Capital, which we have a partnership with OSS Capital to accelerate our activity around open source. And then, where we are having a tight and deep relationship interaction with the Silicon Valley, where CTC America is really driving innovation with us. So I'm also a creator of a cloud native software as a service called Pitwall, which is provide a single click cohesive experience for enterprise DevOps team to bring the productivity to the next level, bridging higher ops consistency as well as higher velocity. If you can Google CTC and Pitwall, which is Pitwall, you can find a little bit about a product. But today, we're gonna discuss about open source, future of AI, and also Japan market as three topics. I would like to share, these excellent panelists' perspective as much as possible to the audience. So we have JJ from OS Capital again. We have Ramin from Liquid AI, Jerry from Stability AI, and then Lion from Second AI. So let's begin. Okay, so we are starting from the first conversation around open source. Of course, foundation of open source being also bringing the AI really, AI and generative AI possible based on JJ's conversation perspective that he shared earlier. And then where we live, how we live is very changing from AI and generative AI by the foundation of open source. But my first question to the panelists would be really, what is open source for you? And why does this matter? I think you have a different perspective of that. You wanna start with from you, JJ?
Sure. For me, open source is an innovation approach. It's a way of innovating. Like I was mentioning about Richard Stallman earlier on, this entire notion or concept was actually invented specifically for the artifact known as source code for software, computer programs. But I think it's actually generally applicable. And the idea of actually relegating free software or open source to software is kind of a mistake, as we're seeing with AI. You can have open source AI and closed source AI, but it's not really software in the conventional sense. It's just these large mathematical structures, like I was mentioning. So for me, I think there's a way of applying that to any kind of human innovation, where it's a protein a discovery or mathematical algorithm or proof, what have you. Anything that actually can be invented or designed by a human, physical or virtual. And I think that we see this kind of general paradigm continue to appear over and over again in the human society. And I think it's going to continue to be a really dominant and fundamental way we actually innovate and create things as humans.
Thank you. Okay, you want to go next, Ramin?
Yeah, definitely.
You should put your mic on.
Yes. Okay, yeah. So science has to be open source, like that's how we learned it, you all went to school, and you have to think about it. And I think we have to find ways to distinguish between products and science of products. So that way you can design a really nice framework, monetize it. You have to think about like how are you gonna make money out of open source as well, right? And there are a lot of challenges. It's not an easy kind of matter. And I think we're at a point where we have to realize how can we do that, but we shouldn't be afraid of open sourcing science and ideas. And it always comes back to us,
Great. Science and products are different. That's very good perspective. Nice. Thank you so much. Jerry, you want to go ahead?
Yes, I think open source, it's a social movement, it's a system of values and beliefs, and it's actually like a form of collective intelligence because people can basically build upon each other's intelligence or work, and also build upon the shoulders of giants. Maybe like multiple people work together to create a giant, and then other people can build on top of that. So yeah, basically, if we didn't have open source, then it would be much harder for humans to help each other and build off of each other, right? So I think it's a really important movement.
Great. Lion?
Hello. Yeah, so I also think that open source is extremely, extremely important. What does it mean for me? I would say in one word, it means progress. Like, I think, what I want is as much progress as quickly as possible in artificial intelligence. And the way to do it is via open source, right? So you can either have a few people in a company working on the problem, or you can have the entire planet collaborating to make progress. I want to premise what I'm about to say by saying that I'm actually a very big fan of OpenAI, right? I have a co-author working there. They've made some amazing products. Nevertheless, when they decided to become closed, they kind of did a grave disservice to us, because they basically took from open source,
Right.
and didn't give back. And when this happened, I saw the writing on the wall, and I was like, oh, this is going to cause all the other big players to shut down too. And this has slowed down progress, right? So this makes me sad. I mean, where would we be if we, as Google, had decided not to open source transformers, right? Google technically has the patent, but we've just put it out there into the world, and people can just use it. But I almost think it's the wrong approach, and I'm going to give you some insider information right now, actually, because I know that in the beginning, Facebook, Meta, did not actually want to open source their Llama, right?
Right.
And it was actually the engineers that sort of tricked them a little bit by saying, oh, we'll give them to academics, right? We'll give the ways to academics, it'll be all right. But of course, the second that happened, the way to everywhere. But then, of course, the highest up at Meta saw what happened, right? The entire planet took the Llama model, tore it apart, was very, very innovative, and put it back together again, right? And now they're able to take the innovation back in and use in their company. And of course, it means that they benefit from the fact that everyone uses their tools now. PyTorch is the most popular, right? Because of the open source and the fact that they open sourced that framework as well. So yeah, there's my answer.
Well, thank you so much. Well, I think what I've heard from panelists was that really open source is not really a goal. Open source has different really dimensions that people will interact for the science transparency, for the transparency of progress, and then the way that we develop, we bring something happen, like Meta did, was really driven by open source. I also have a personal experience around Open Compute project, which Meta has open sourced, brought really another level of operational efficiency on a data center cloud. So which is a very good example of that too. At the same time, the business model around open source is really another topic that I also use a few open sources in my product too, like Puppeteer and things like that. And then experts in the industry, leader of like JJ, he's been working really specifically on open source. My question would be the business model evolution around open source, where the industry might be heading. Going back to the first generation of I think open source business model is really about Red Hat. They made a Linux and they made really subscription model distribution of the Linux to be available for the enterprise. Second generation was basically following what Red Hat did, like Cassandra, MongoDB, these people that followed where Red Hat was heading. Third one is about really making software as a service business model on top of open source software. Good example is probably Chronosphere. One of the unicorn companies in the Valley invented M3DB, but their business model was built, software as a service on top of what they have invented. So I think that's what I know so far. You wanna start, JJ? Where the industry might be heading around the business model, around open source, or where it needs to be, if you have any perspective, please.
Sure. Well, I think you summarized it really well there. I'm not sure what much more I can add, but yeah, Red Hat was I mean, there were a handful of companies before Red Hat. By the way, we're really honored to have the co-founder of Red Hat as an investor in Liquid AI, Mr. Bob Young. So hey, Bob, if you watch this. But Red Hat was probably the biggest company that made monetizing open source and creating a business around open source sort of popular, and it introduced that idea to the technology industry in a way that was very impactful, because Linux became this dominant server-side operating system, and as large companies started to adopt Linux for running their server infrastructure and their data center applications, they needed sort of a version of Linux that was reliable and that could be more secure and maintained and updated and so on. And so Red Hat really kind of invented this idea of a software insurance policy that would be sold as a support subscription. And as part of that, their product was so stable that it was sort of indistinguishable from selling a software license. But the software was actually not proprietary. It was really just providing a sort of an uptime and a stability guarantee, or sort of a security guarantee around the software. Sort of that enterprise version of Linux, RHEL, Red Hat Enterprise Linux. And so I think after that, we started to see the next generation of open source companies build, like you were saying, Hisa-san, sort of cloud services around open source technologies. And open source projects are really raw and complicated and often very difficult to run in production, and they have a lot of rough edges. And so companies like HashiCorp, MongoDB, Elastic, GitLab, you mentioned Chronosphere, a lot of companies in our portfolio do the same thing, is they have the open source project, and you build really a product around that open source project for a specific type of customer. It could be an enterprise, it could be a professional end user, and you really offer additional features around that for that particular end user customer. And most of the time, companies offer that up as a service. And so I think there's going to be, this is really the focus of my fund, OSS Capital. We've made 70 investments here. We've led 35 rounds of financing at incorporation all around the world in 15 different countries. I'm on probably too many boards than I would care to admit, but they're all really small companies. And the general idea is you take the open source project and you build a commercial product and offer it up as a cloud service. And my view is that's kind of where we're at right now. This is what OpenAI does, obviously, with their API, and pretty much every software company does the same thing. But I think in general, over the next kind of 10 to 15 years, we're going to see that model continue to be very dominant, and probably trillions of dollars in companies value move towards that approach, that sort of open core commercial open source model. What I think is going to replace that eventually over maybe 20 years or 30 years for the whole technology industry is probably cryptocurrencies and blockchains. And I'm actually pretty optimistic about that. If you talk about this too much these days, it's a little bit polarizing, because the whole cryptocurrency, kind of crypto world, Web3, blockchain world, whatever acronyms and buzzwords you want to use, is very polarizing, and there's a lot of scams and a lot of speculation. It's a very speculative sort of asset, but in general, that's kind of where I think things would probably shift over a very long term. And I would mention one project we're actually pretty major investors in, called BitTensor, which is a way of running AI models on a sort of decentralized blockchain. And there's going to be a lot of innovation kind of happening there as well.
Thanks so much. Well, I think you've also, added another perspective on what I also shared. But at companies that you've been probably using open source as well as, get a benefit out of transparency of what's going in the market, any perspective they would like to add, how you interact with open source and developers, community contributions, anything from Ramin?
Not really. I think you guys, captured it very well. So for the sake of time, I'll just pass it on.
Yeah, pretty much the same. I mean, we make a lot of usage of open source libraries, and we refer to both for machine learning and non-machine learning, like text processing libraries and things like that, right? So yeah, we are definitely building on the shoulders of giants, and yeah, we couldn't provide what we provide if we didn't have access to those like libraries and code bases, for sure. Which is probably what any company could say nowadays, almost.
Right. So Lion, shared about your perspective on people, some company use it, but didn't give it back. What's anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think I actually really believe that if you do open source correctly, you will beat closed source, right? Just because of the acceleration that can give you. Because, if you put the right thing out there and get people enthusiastic about it, like if you just a big part of the very surprising progress in AI recently is definitely because of the open source, right? There are literally hackers that don't work for a particular company in their bedroom that have actually contributed some really important ideas to AI. I guess I wanted to touch briefly on sort of the AI, the open source business model, because it's a really interesting question, I think. One reason for that is on the surface, it doesn't look like it would work from a sort of capitalism point of view. If you said, no, people will build software that will run the world for free. But that's what Linux is basically, right? And it basically runs everyone's phone in this room. But from some sort of a personal point of view, because we started a company and it is for profit, we have to find a balance. We've also joined the AI Alliance, right? So we do have sort of a promise to give back to the community. There are compute deals we've made, and the part of the deal is that the product that comes out of that has to be open sourced. But that, clearly we need to do something to keep for ourselves in order to make profits. And actually, something that Ramin just said has just tweaked something in my brain. And I think open source the science, but then keep the sort of business idea to yourself, right? So maybe the fundamental research is something you can put out there, but what you build on top of it is maybe your secret sauce. Yeah.
Totally makes sense. Thank you very much for excellent.
I would totally agree with that.
Yeah.
The one thing I would say is open source is not a business model. I think that these kinds of conversations and questions have been going on for decades. Like, how do you sort of like explain why Red Hat works? How do they make money? I think open source means something very specific, and it refers to a discrimination-free way of innovating and creating a technology on the production side, and discrimination-free usage and manipulation and modification of that technology on the consumption side. And that's it, nothing else. It has nothing to do with capitalism. It has nothing to do with making money. And it also has nothing to do with business models. And so I think it's very counterintuitive when you have the conversations around, I mean, I think about this all day long. I'm an investor. I invest in these kinds of companies. To think about how do you make money that way. And I totally agree. You have the scientific inventions and the fundamentals, and that's really important for progress. Accelerating progress is like the only thing that really makes the world better for humans and for the technology industry and for everything. But in terms of business models, at the end of the day, business models are not this complicated, idea. It's you create something of value, you charge money for it, and people will pay you if they feel like they're getting value for the thing that for the thing they give you money for. And open source is just really different. It's something that focuses on the invention and innovation of technology, which is just human creativity. And so I think if we can conflate those two things, and we can kind of fall into this trap of sort of not really thinking clearly. So personally, I think that they're completely separate. I don't think that there is such thing as an open source business model. I think that there's such thing as open source technology, but when you say open source business model, I think it confuses the conversation a little bit. But generally, I totally agree with what you're saying around science and you know, making money and building products, basically.
All right, thanks so much. So although I'd like to ask, you know, more and go further, let's move on to the next topic, which is future of AI. First of all, I'd like to start, you know, where we are today, really about, you know, I think the audience is very curious about industry leaders like yourself. What do you use AI or generative AI for in your daily life? Like I use OpenAI for, you know, to create a better, you know, the email, you know, drafting or, you know, things like that, you know, other people does too. But if you can quickly share, what do you guys do, you know, what do you guys use generative AI for today in your daily life? Ramin, you want to start? Yeah.
Yeah, I can start. Like all sort of productivity kind of things. Like because today's generative AI is mostly targeted on the productivity aspect of things, you know, like for, you know, enhancing my coding capabilities. You know, I code every day, and yeah, like that's definitely one of those things. Like search is another thing that is like enabled by you know, generative AI. But everything productivity. Where I want this to go is like actual problem solving. You know, like that's the part that is missing. And I think reliable problem solving, this is like, I think the next step, and this is where we're going. And I think there is the time where AI is going to be integrated in our kind of daily life.
It's good to have today, but not enough for your problem solving
Yes.
perspective.
Yes, in a reliable fashion.
In a
you know,
reliable
like,
fashion.
yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much. Jerry, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I mean, so I use AI for all sorts of things, of course, but yeah, just to pick up one example, so I use it to try to make people happy. So when somebody has like, you know, a birthday or the, you know, the organizing event, then I might, you know, send a nice, you know, greeting card. You know, you know, like put my wife into like a picture, made her look really nice in the picture. Like hopefully the, you know, the face wasn't like off by too much. Yeah, and also, you know, generate like a song or like a music video so that my friend can use it at their party, like and they can be singing about the, you know, the dumplings that they're eating at the party or whatever topic. It's just like very easy to create things and to just you know, make people like happy or have fun. So, you know, that's, you know, I use it for productivity as well. But yeah, that's another way.
All right, cool. You want to go next?
Do you know what? I think I'm going to admit to something. I don't think I use it enough. I think maybe I'm set in my ways, right? I mean, it's interesting. I've been programming exactly the same way for decades, and then all of a sudden, you know, that's not the way you should program anymore, and it's kind of difficult to shift. So I have to keep reminding myself. You know, I'll be on Stack Overflow, like trying to work out. Hang on, just ask ChatGPT, right? And you know, more often than not, it works much better. You know, or you know, I'll use Copilot for like completing my code, and embarrassingly, very recently, you know, it completed some code for me, and it went, Chota Chigao, fixed it, carried on, then spent 10 minutes debugging it, and then realized actually it was correct, right? And I think it's really important that people do use these tools, right? So if you're listening and you don't use these tools, you're being left behind, right? So, you know, people like to say, we don't know if AI is going to take everyone's jobs, but you're definitely, you know, your jobs are definitely going to be taken by people using AI if you're not using AI. And, you know, people still are sort of hesitant, it seems, but we're hiring right now, right? So we're, you know, interviewing, and we've sent some coding problems out, and people sheepishly admit, oh yeah, I kind of use ChatGPT a bit to sort of help with this bit. And I'm like, you should be, right? If you're not, right, it's 2024. That's how you program, right? If you're not, you're being left behind, right? So, you know, the last thing I'll say is schools that sort of try to ban the tool, like you can't use ChatGPT for anything, that's the wrong thing, right? It's the future. It's here to stay. You got to learn how to sort of coexist with it. It would be like banning calculators in maths now, right? So yeah, so if you're not already, please go and learn these tools and use them.
Okay. Well, definitely OpenAI, ChatGPT is our friend, right? In the daily life. But from the business perspective, what is OpenAI for you? Is that competitor or is that something that you would coexist? If you can share your perspective as individual corporate, funders and leadership. Rami, you wanna get started?
Yeah. So I mean, honestly, I don't think we are at the scale to actually be competitor to OpenAI, because I mean, like you need to have resources to build, as Leon said, like they just massively scaled transformers into the scale that it would be beyond our infrastructure capabilities, right? So that would be like something that we're definitely going to be coexisting with them. The fact that our approach is like to delivering our products and going to market are very different. For example, like we work with enterprises directly, and we provide our systems privately, like available to the clients. So we are not hosting so we are actually going after edge, efficiency, and also like those properties of the models that I was talking about, driving cars, flying drones, flying airplanes, and all sort of other types of generative AI that you can enable reliably. It's going to be on the edge, like especially for liquid AI, and those kind of applications would be like setting us apart from the business side. But at the same time, of course, like we are moving towards a direction to become competitive in this space of kind of generative AI, but not necessarily by scaling dramatically, but also like thoughtfully. Okay.
Jay, you wanna go next?
Yeah, so yeah, basically, yes, we are competitors, and yes, we can coexist with them, right? For example, like there are actually many like apps and services that use like both our models and ChatGPT API, for example, right? So maybe they use ChatGPT for the text part, and then use our models for like the image generation part. Also, as Raman mentioned, there's like a lot of areas where you basically cannot use OpenAI models because they are closed, right? And also, yeah, just the customizability and flexibility of open models, right? So the paper behind stable diffusion, latent diffusion models, where for the authors work at Stability AI, it got over 4,000 citations already in the last like year and a half or so.
Wow.
So that show, and there's a ton of people that are like building upon it or like modifying it or building plugins for it who are not even writing papers, right? There's probably like at least hundreds and thousands of developers kind of making modifications to stable diffusion and other models like that, right? So this is something that you cannot do with a closed model, right? And so we really value that kind of open ecosystem of like all these the people and the community and all like the plugins and like the add-ons like on top of our models, right? Which I think is really great.
All right. Leon?
Yeah, so definitely not a competitor. Like I said, despite some misgivings, I'm a big fan of OpenAI. If I can get you to recall our logo, right? A part of the imagery was that the companies like Google, OpenAI are the black fish going in the same direction of trying to scale things up. And we really do, want to take the time to just hire, very talented people and just give them the space. I'm literally telling people as they come aboard, like, okay, what research itch have you had, right? Now you can have the time to breathe, and greatness can't be planned, but that we have the time. So we're hoping that something, very different will sort of come out from allowing people to sort of explore different directions.
Totally makes sense. Thank you. So JJ, as a the VC and investor, you have varieties of companies that are taking different approaches, right? So anything to add from you?
No, I think it's pretty revealing. Like there's these incumbents that have tens of billions of dollars. They're scaling the models and products in a specific kind of way, just continuing to push the boundary of what they're able to acquire with the capital they have. And I think I think we've really seen this time and time again. Well, one thing that I would say on that, just to kind of maybe add some additional comments to what they said, was I think it would be pretty surprising if the current massive scale, kind of super capital intensive incumbent approaches end up dominating the future of how these systems are actually adopted by humans. I think there's going to be huge breakthroughs by companies taking very different approaches, and there's a lot of really smart companies in the world right now taking very different approaches that are more capital efficient and more nature inspired and physics inspired. And so I think that's very promising, and we're probably going to see some big changes in pretty much the way everything works. I mean, there's been $2 trillion in market cap for NVIDIA that materialized in the last 4 years. This is kind of crazy, right? And so I think we've seen these kinds of phenomena happen before in the tech industry over the last 30 years. I think we're probably going to see some major changes in the next 5 years or so.
I think it's also important to remember that, even if you don't open source something, the open source community will work furiously to make sure it becomes open source, right? People, I think, forget the rate of progress, right? I remember when people were clamoring to get hold of GPT-3. Now we have endless numbers of GPT-3s we can play with for free, right? So I think, that will also allow us to keep up with the big players. I'm sure most people are familiar with the news that Zuckerberg has just bought the equivalent of 600,000 GPUs, and he's going to train a large language model and open source it, right? So, these powerful models are going to be open source soon.
Well, thank you very much. You guys are finding the way that you would interact and you would, play in this AI dynamics as a game plan. Really about, AI and big guys, but like we talked, earlier, like open source community, that people are distributed, not genius, software engineers are developing some closed software, but people are all contributing, and then so that the industry that we are heading is not going to be dominant by really capital intensive stuff, but really about utilizing or benefiting out of what we all do in the industry. That's thank you very much for your sharing your perspective. This is actually next one is a request from audience. They really care about privacy and security. Is this important? And what's your what is your plan for privacy and security, if that is important for you? You might not start, Ramin?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think let me start with the security and safety. Like, I want to put them next to each other because I see a spectrum from understanding models, explaining models. The capability of explaining models is something that we need to have, first. And then from explainability, you move into analyzing a system into like robustness properties of a system or quantifying uncertainties around your system. And after that, you have formal verification of your system, right? So this would be like a spectrum where I put safety, ensuring safety of these systems. And computer scientists have been trying out like all aspects of this thing. And I think we're going to see more and more. And I think it's a super exciting area. If you want to focus on these topics, I think about this spectrum that I just mentioned, and each of which would be like, there's demand for, innovation across the board. And so this way you can actually ensure and start asking like fundamentally solve problems. This is what I think is necessary in the security and safety matters. On the privacy side, the same thing. Like there are techniques that are out there. Like, how many people here are technical people or developers? Let's see, maybe half. Yeah, okay. So this half, like, you need to also think about, like, these are opportunities for you, exciting opportunities. For example, there's a matter called differential privacy again. I think very, very scientific about these things because I want these things to be solved fundamentally, So Differential privacy is this discussing the idea of having a model, and then you can literally like encode privacy as part of training or development of the software that you're doing, you know. So you want to go towards those kind of, we are still at the very, very early stages of these topics, but it would be really nice to think from first principles. And this is what we do at Liquid AI. We are thinking about these matters absolutely like a, you know, as kind of a research kind of project, and we try to solve them with the methods that I just mentioned.
Great insight. Well, thank you. Jerry, you want to take a shot?
Yeah, so I mean, we already mentioned the kind of like running AI models like on the edge or even like on-prem offline, but you know that is like one like important way, and you know many Japanese companies are considering this too. Well, one way to ensure privacy and security, right? Because yeah, if you're sending something over the internet, yes, there are kind of like encryption methods and differential privacy and stuff, but yeah, it's just another like sending something over the internet to like a server far away that you know you don't know where that server is, you know, that is like fundamentally like a risk in terms of privacy and safety and security. And yeah, just to try to like some companies will want to manage that themselves, or you know some people they want the model to like run on their own phone, right? Yeah, but I think yeah, fundamentally there's like many algorithms and methods, both like AI based and non-AI based, to kind of like filter inputs into a model, like you know, filter or check the outputs of a model. And yeah, that can be like a very long discussion area of research. Yeah.
All right. What about your perspective, Lion?
Yeah, of course, it's extremely important. My worry actually is that we're not educating people fast enough about the dangers of AI, right? I see more and more often, you know, if I go into forums and see a picture that has been generated, clearly, obviously to me, been generated. Like, for example, there was I was on a chess thread, and they were like, "Oh, look at these chess pieces I made." And I could tell, but I went into the thread and people were talking about it as if like, you know, how did you make it? Or like they will look really cool. And, you know, people are for some reason distracted by more of this sort of Hollywood-esque existential threat stuff. And that's not what we need to be talking about. Like, we need to be telling people, hey, it's 2024. You cannot trust anything on the internet now. Okay? If your child phones you up and it's their voice, might not be them. Or even if they do a Zoom call, right? By the the middle of this year, probably you'll be able to fake being whoever you want, right? So yeah. Hang on, I did have another point. No, it's gone.
All right. Oh, it was short. Thank you.
I don't
Wanna
think
add
it's
something?
possible
Yeah.
to have privacy or security without actually being able to control the technology. And I don't think it's possible to control the technology unless the technology is open source. And so we've seen that with infrastructure software, programming languages, compilers, application servers, operating systems. We're going to see that with AI in what Meta's doing with Llama, Stable Diffusion. There's going to be a huge wave of models that are open, transparent, and allow you to at least, at a minimum, control the software end to end. Even if we don't necessarily have explainability just yet, we're probably going to get explainable systems. I do not think that any company can promise a customer or a user privacy or safety unless the customer and the user is able to control the technology. So on that, I'll just say, and again, this is sort of a double-edged thing, sort of like what Lion was mentioning, but there's this device here called the iPhone, and Apple spends probably hundreds of millions, maybe billions on advertising campaigns that say the Apple iPhone equals privacy. So this is the biggest lie being told to humans, because there's, you know, $300 billion business right here, which is the largest business in the world, by the way, maybe second to the oil industry. And the consumers and the people who use this device are not in control of it. So it's actually not a private device. Yet I use it every day, and it's an awesome product, and I love the product. So I think there's that trade-off. Humans really have to understand that unless you can truly control the technology, you're not able to guarantee privacy or safety.
I remember my point, by the way.
Oh,
So I
ahead.
might as well say it.
Yeah.
And it's related to the education, right? I have a platform, right? So I should use it. You cannot detect AI generated content. Okay, you can't do it. Anyone that's trying to sell you a product, or you go to a website that say you can, You can't. And it really makes me angry because, you know, there are students' lives being ruined by teachers that go to fake websites and put their essay in, like, oh yeah, it's generated. So the only thing you can do, right, if you can't detect the fakes, is to certify what's real. And there was a company that I almost thought about starting before starting this one, where, you know, you basically create an online database of real media, right? So imagine you are a journalist and you want to sell your pictures of the Ukraine war to a newspaper. Well, maybe you can't now because the newspaper's like, well, you know, did you really go to Ukraine or did you use Stability AI to generate this? So, you know, if at the point of taking the picture, you cryptographically sign it, then you can create this database. And actually, literally 4 days ago, I met somebody at a party just coincidentally, worked at Adobe, and they've actually created this project, right? So this is coming. So, you know, it's kind of bizarre that we're at the point now where we have to very quickly sign all of the existing media that we have so that people in the future know what was real or not. And this, you know, people might not be aware, but this project is now underway.
Well, thank you. Okay, so I think we are tight on time. So last topic about Japan market. I will be asking you one by one, give you probably a minute. So we are not in a conference in the US today. It's Tokyo here. Audience is looking for how they can interact or what they can do with you guys moving forward. Tomorrow, CTC is going to make an announcement of a partnership with Liquid AI for this Japan market. And then you guys have a different really background of Sakana AI started from Japan, and then Stability AI founders have a really tight, you know, history and then connection to Japan. And then you're coming to Japan for, you know, business development. What's your priority, I would say, or how you know, Japan is positioned in your journey out of a startup? And what's the expectation you might have, if you might have, from Japan really society? You want to start from?
Yeah,
Liam?
sure. I mean, there's two aspects to that, right? Obviously, from a personal point of view, Tokyo is the first place in the world that I live because I want to be here. Like everywhere else was circumstance, but when I got far enough in my career that I could actually make that decision, you know, I chose Tokyo because I absolutely adore it here. You know, for all the reasons that people usually give, like how friendly the people are, how safe it is, the food and all that. But yeah, you know, the question I get the most probably is why Japan? You know, everywhere I go, why Japan? Why Japan? So you know, I've answered the question quite a lot, and I'll be honest with you, when we were fundraising, there were people who are saying, well, you know, you should start a company in America, maybe, and then sort of have an office here. But no, we decided to do a 100% Japanese company. And I can tell you that there's been absolutely no regret. Like you know, the decision to do that has been reinforced as a really good decision, you know, as we're making progress. And it's partly because the support that we've been getting. Right. So all the way from, you know, individual people living here, you know, I've literally had people come to the office just so that I can say, thank you for starting the company in Japan, you know, all the way up to the government, right, that really want to make an example of us, as, you know, to show that people that Japan really is a good place to start a company. And I can report, yes, it is, you know, it is going really well. And I think what we've been able to do, right, is because, you know, we've been very lucky that, you know, mine and David's name is well known enough that we were basically able to strong arm Silicon Valley VCs to invest in a Japanese company, right, which is very difficult to do. You know, I think we've had the most ever invested from, you know, from Silicon Valley to Japan, but we've opened that door now, right? We've set a precedent, right? So we're, you know, we're hoping that it's not just us. We really want a very strong AI hub to be in Japan, right? I think it's very important that Asia has a very strong AI community in a diplomatic country.
That's very encouraging. Thank you. Ramin, you want to go next?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the reasons that we already have presence here, and we have interacted with the talent in Japan, especially from University of Tokyo and the other research institutions, NII and RIKEN, for example. And we're like mind blown, like it is really like I've been, even teaching and doing research at MIT, and I can tell you like we are on par, like in terms of like talent and conversations that I have like with people here. So there is absolutely that aspect that is like very, very encouraging. Plus the relationship with CTC that is building and is getting stronger on bringing these edge AI applications, in reliable kind of technologies. Japan is really good with hardware related kind of startups and the base, like robotics, for example. And we're very excited to actually get into this thing and bring AI to the companies and to those kind of infrastructures that are already like basically ready for bringing AI to the society. And yeah, that's.
Thank you. Jerry?
Yeah, so there are several reasons, why we're in Japan and the opportunity we see here. But yeah, to bring up one, there's a lot of amazing creative talent in companies here in Japan, right? For example, in the media entertainment, right, the ad agencies, designers, musicians, artists, anime industry, video game industry. Yeah, so there are just like a lot of creative companies and people that want to do like cool stuff, make cool games or cool art or like amazing designs, using, both like technology and also, their kind of their own creativity. And I feel like, that's a great fit for the kind of models that we're making.
Thank you. Your perspective, JJ?
Yeah, one of the things that wasn't mentioned, but I think is a really big deal for pretty much any AI company, but in particular Liquid AI and other companies we're working with, is the regulatory environment here in Japan is actually very favorable for training on any kind of data set and any training corpus. And so I think that there's actually two countries in the world that currently have a very friendly and sort of like AI nirvana regulatory framework. One is Israel, which is unfortunately in the middle of a war, and the other is Japan. And so I think there's going to be a lot of talent, both in terms of foreign direct investment, like the Silicon Valley VCs that invested in Sakana, as well as talent potentially even moving here, and companies that want to actually build and train great, powerful and next generation models here in Japan for those reasons. And then of course we're also seeing just the general regulatory environment in the United States and Europe being very, very different as far as censorship and capability thresholds for AI models. And for, at least from what I'm seeing so far, Japan is very forward thinking and very very disruptive to a lot of those maybe more kind of arcane frameworks that we're seeing in other countries. So I think that's actually a huge advantage for Japan as a country.
Well, thanks so much. I think we leave the remaining time for audience questions, right? You want me to hand it over to you? Okay.
All right, thank you so much for the great discussions and panel sessions. And I would love to get questions from the Venture Cafe areas and also online. And there's someone already posted questions online, but for the time, limited time that we have, I think we will prioritize the questions coming from the in-person Venture Cafe. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. So for each of the companies, among all the users that you serve, which particular group do you find the most important and want to serve? Why? And what was the earliest launches like?
Great question. So by group of people, what do you mean? Like, do you mean industry, sector? What do you,
For example, there could be, maybe artists using AI, and then there could be, engineers, using it for different purposes. There's a wide variety of use cases. So, but from your company perspective, what's the key group that you want to focus on?
Yeah. So for us, like we have two kind of packages. One is like very developer package where people can get access to the technology itself, and they can build with that technology. So that's the developers like number one, basically, that we went after. And we have like also like other enterprise facing kind of tools that they could be used by a general kind of people that work at companies, but I think there's a balance between the two.
Yeah, our company kind of isn't very good at focusing. We want to create like every type of model and serve every kind of industry. But I would say, yeah, a media entertainment industry is quite an important one for us.
I don't think I have an answer to that question because it's such early days. We don't have any users. And, we are primarily a research company. And part of the business model is that we are lucky enough to be able to have the time and the space to do long-term speculative research. So, we might not even have users for a while. So yeah, too early to answer that question, sorry.
Thank you.
Hello, so this is Rishabh, and I'm a developer. So my question would be a bit related to scalability, though maybe as Leon mentioned, the product might take some time to come. But so when we come to think about normal models we have now, they are based on parameters. So when it comes to scalability, maybe billion or trillion parameters coming together in one AI model, and maybe we scale it up. So in case of, for example, generative AGI, for example, or even in case of something bit different than transformers, maybe something which Liquid AI is doing as well. What would be the limiting factor in the scalability? Like, is it valid to talk about parameters present in the model, or that will not be question at all when it comes to AGI?
Well, I think there are different approaches. Like one thing that we clearly see, there is a scaling kind of law. The scaling laws are definitely there, and you can definitely see emergent properties of models as you scale them. This is true with alternative architectures as well. Now, whether you can build like a really good smaller agent and then build an agentic kind of view into like designing AI systems, that's another way to scale, right? Like to build a really good agent or specialized agents, and then you can have like multiple of that, and then you can build like, and I don't know which route is going to first discover AGI. It might be coexistence of both approaches, but this is how I think, and I think the notion of parameter would definitely hold still. Yeah,
I agree with that. So basically, unfortunately, and you can't really get away from the fact that the bitter lesson is a real thing. So I guess the people that don't know, the bitter lesson is that as an AI researcher, you have two ways of increasing the accuracy of your model. You can either spend time looking at the model, trying different things, maybe wiring it up a different way, or use 10 times more data and 10 times more compute, and that wins, right? Which is kind of sad when you're doing research. So I think the number of parameters is still very important and is a useful metric. I think the view that Sakana is taking is that there are more efficient ways of scaling up these things, right? So for example, the human brain is much more sparse than a transformer, and I think it's true to say that a lot of our intelligence doesn't come from just our brain. It comes from the fact that we're in a community, right? That we actually communicate between brains, and that's very, very sparse, right? So, the idea would be to maybe look if we can have like a swarm of smaller models that can interact. And then, once we have something interesting there, scaling that up and see what happens. Then, yeah, so parameters are still useful, but I think there's better ways than just buying 600,000 GPUs. Yeah.
Oh, one last thing. So when would we be seeing the next major milestone or development from Sakana? So in terms of product.
Yeah, way too early to answer that question. We've only existed like for less than half a year, I think. So, you know, nothing to announce yet, unfortunately. So I'm going to answer a different question. And a lot of people like to ask me what's coming after the transformer, right? You know, perhaps you might expect us to try to work out what's coming after the transformer. And I think it's very difficult. I think, you know, the reason that the transformer has been so sticky is because of, you know, the innovation where we made it very easy to train in a parallel manner and, you know, very deep. And, you know, the architecture makes it very easy to train because a lot of gradients. So the bitter lesson basically meant that whenever you try to transform on something, it just worked better. And it was like obviously better and very easy to get it working. So there are probably better architectures, but they have to be obviously better or very easy to get working to shift the entire industry over. And I think that hasn't happened yet because we haven't had that breakthrough. What's coming next? I don't know. But I'll actually be honest when I say that liquid neural networks looks extremely interesting to me, and I wouldn't be surprised if that was next.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we're running out of time, but I want to ask one question from the online participants because we have over 200 online participants. And if you're joining offline at the Venture Cafe today, you can ask them at networking. So, and the first person who asked online say, as young startup founders, do you think in 10 years, do you think we'll still have something similar with the current big tech, few companies dominating the markets, or AI will create a more fragmented landscape?
10 years is such a long time, especially in tech. And the progress is just, I mean, if you think about the fact that the amount of compute used to train artificial intelligence doubles every 6 months, right? 10 years represents a millionfold. So there's no way I can tell you what's going to be happening in 34. Yeah.
I agree with Lion. I don't think anyone knows what's going to happen in a decade. But I think there's this thing called the Pareto distribution. It's like a power law. And I think the question was, are there still going to be huge technology companies in 10 years, or is it going to be more distributed out? I think there's still going to be pretty concentrated. You can call them monopolies or, you know, super huge companies. To Leon's point, I don't know if we're actually going to see the same group of companies today also be the same companies in 10 years that are the top 10 biggest companies. It might be a different group of companies. It could be Sakana, it could be Liquid, it could be any, you know, no one really knows. You can create a really huge company in 10 years. I mean, NVIDIA went from 50 billion valuation to 2 trillion in 4 years here. So there's a huge amount of change that can happen. But I personally think there's this natural law, the Pareto distribution. I don't think that's ever going to go away. And what it basically means is we're always going to have very significant concentration of size and scale in a small part of the distribution. And then there's sort of a very big spike, and then it goes down, and then it sort of long tail kind of shapes out. And I think that's always going to be the case in pretty much any area of of phenomena. It could be humans, it could be companies, it could be technology, what have you.
Thank you so much for great answers. Yeah, 10 years might be a quite long time, but for the young startup founders, I think it's a long way to go. Yeah. Well, I think we are reaching to the time limits, but thank you so much for the guest speakers. Please give them a big applause. And thank you so much, Tanaka-san, being a great moderators. And we have about 30 minutes of networking time from now on, but unfortunately, Laming and JJ have to leave by 7 p.m., I heard. So if you guys want to connect with two of them, please do before they go, before they leave CSC. And I think we have a survey. Do you want to? And we do have a survey for this event today, and we'll post it on the screen later. So if you can answer that, that'd be great. And that's it for today's event. And please enjoy networking, and thank you so much for coming to CIC today.